Alrighty, everybody. Let's try to get a game in. See how it goes. My last game did not go so well. I kind of punted a few times, pretty badly. All right, so e4. Let's go e5. Knight f3, knight c6, and then the bishop. Where's it gonna go? So we're in the Italian game. Well, this is kind of where my learning first started. Was the Italian game. I just liked the name. And on the Italian game, when that bishop comes out, we just mirror the bishop. Now, it is entirely possible that the bishop's coming back, but we want to get the bishop out so that we can get our knight out. Because this knight and this bishop could put pressure on our f7 pawn. Notice that once we move the knight, the queen blocks defense of the g5 square, so the knight could swing around and put that double pressure on, just like that. But, so there's pressure here, but that's okay, because we can just castle. And now, we've got an extra defender. So now my opponent could trade, and I've seen them trade both pieces for a pawn and a rook. I've seen that trade before. What I'm probably going to do next is just shift my queen up. I was thinking maybe I'd push a pawn all the way up, but no, because that comes with an attack on my knight. So let's just get the queen out of the way. I don't really need to because I've still got two defenders here. Doesn't really matter what they are. We could shift around here. See, if my opponent captures, I capture, they capture, then I capture back. Yeah, let's see if we can get our bishop into the fray. Nah, I don't like it. I don't like it, guys. I don't like it. I mean, I could rotate the knight up here and then put pressure on the bishop that way. I'm not certain yet, guys. I'm not certain. So if I go here now, my opponent could take with the knight. I take with a pawn. My opponent takes back. He's up a pawn in that exchange. That doesn't seem very fun, does it? All right, let's do... All right, let's get an a-pawn push. What I'm doing is eventually I'm going to put my bishop along this diagonal. I'll get my... I was debating if I want to go ahead with a full a5 push. But then when I get my bishop over, it undefends that pawn so the queen could pick it up. Let's just leave it like this. Let's just leave it like this. This is a fine structure. Okay, so we're going to start picking up the pace now. We don't want to waste too much time. The clock at 7:30. My opponent's got an extra minute on his clock. He's rotating his knight around this way. So now we got our bishop up here. My opponent can trade, but I have it covered. This pawn is undefended. So if my opponent were to move, well, I can tell you one thing. I would like to pick up here. And then if my opponent picks up here, then we both continue onward. Notice if I capture, it's just going to come... Let's go ahead and make this trade. This is the trade we wanted to make so that we no longer have to worry about this. F7, idea anymore. And then we can push an H pawn and drive the knight away. One thing I did not notice was that our bishop is trapped. So let us make some movement squares for our bishop. So my opponent can take, but I can take back. So the question is, how important is my opponent's knight to him? Does he want to keep the knight, or does he want to take my bishop? All right, so we saved our piece. That was a close one. My opponent has... nah, it's not really a problem. I'll say my opponent has an undefended rook, so I could capture, and my opponent cannot capture with the A pawn. He'd have to capture with his C pawn. But since he has the C pawn there ready to go, there's no concern. Captures back. No. So now the next move is to get this knight out of here. So where can this knight go? This knight can go here. Can't go here anymore, but it can go back. So it's got some backward squares it could go to. I was looking to see if I had a cool discovery. So captures, my opponent captures back, and then I capture. But captures, my opponent can just capture this way. But then I capture back, and he captures back. So most likely my opponent's going to capture this way. So one pawn for me, and then we trade everything. So it ends up being an even trade, I think. Nope. I'll say at the end of the day, I have a pawn that's loose. But no, it's not. My opponent's trapped in. This pawn is... Nope, this pawn is covered. So I'm good there. This pawn is also covered. Now, the concern I have now is what happens if my opponent pushes down now? Where could this knight go? Nowhere. So I've got to get my bishop a little bit out of the way so my knight has a square to retreat to. And I'm thinking we'll put the bishop... Where do we want the bishop to go, y'all? Here or here? Here... Do we want a queen trade? Let's force a queen trade. Why the hell not? I'm going to keep my bishop along this side, just in case anything starts to develop. It is defended here. And now I've got squares to rotate my knight through, which I am happy about that. So my opponent's looking to put double pressure here. I kind of want this to be on the outside, so I guess we're going here. So we each have two attackers. He just wanted the trade, I guess? It's defended. I wonder if I should have taken back with the rook to force the rook trade. Don't know. All right, so opponent has two defenders here, and I have two attackers. And that bishop is doing a good job to protect the base of that pawn chain. All right, so let's take care of our back rank issues. So that pawn is going to fall. My opponent has a dark square bishop, so now my pawns are on dark squares, so they're going to act as my protection, as I'm going to hide up my king in here. So I've lost a pawn in the trade. This knight is undefended. Either way, I have to rotate my knight around. But I can't move the knight, because if I move the knight, then my opponent has 2 attackers and I only have 1 defender, whereas right now I have 2 defenders, so we have to make the exchange. But now my opponent has back rank issues, and I don't. So now I am going to make these trades because I'd really like to see this open up for me so I can get one of my rook down. So my opponent has some issues right now. Big time issues. He needs to bring this rook all the way back. Just like that. Bringing my knight up and around. So I'm down on the clock. So the reason because my opponent has back rank issues, yeah. So I can't rotate that guy around, but we'll make another square here. Captures, and then, oops, nope, that's not what I wanted to do. That was a mistake. That was a mistake. I meant to do it the other way around. Damn it. That was a mistake. So I now have isolated pawns everywhere. Not happy about that. Not happy about that at all. I'm going to bring my rook back over and see if I can take care of this backwards pawn. Maybe create a passed pawn on the opposite side, the queen side of the board, maybe. Is that okay? Yeah, that's okay. Mission to come up this way, put some pressure on this bishop. Opponent could defend it, but he drops back here. Oh no, I have to be really careful. I have to be really careful because... But I've got a little bit of a hidey hole backwards, so I'm okay there, I think. Oh no. Why do I always do this to myself? I always end up trapping my king. I need to be more comfortable walking my king out to the back of the board. If we can get here, we can put some pressure on this backwards pawn. So we're going to trade pawns here. And I'm going to take with the rook, I believe, because that gives me the knight picking up the other one. I don't have to do anything. I'm isolated pawns everywhere, though, so that's a pain in my butt. Can I go there? Is that safe? Put an extra defender there. Opponent could go right here, which would kind of trap this. I guess not. I guess I can still come down this way. Well, let me see. Can I defend with the knight? Yes, I can. So I'm defending and attacking. I push. God, the timer. I'm going to try to go as fast as I can, y'all. Oh, no, and we both drop. How about them apples, huh? We both drop. Bah! That's what happens when you try to go too fast. That's what happens when you try to go too fast. So if my opponent captures here, I can push past. If he captures here, then I have to... Okay, so I can push past. I might be able to get a queen out of this. Nope, I can't. So all I got is a stalemate here, friends. It's all I got. And I'm not smart enough to see the stalemate this fast. I know that I have to just get under the pawn. I wish there was any increment. He could have just pushed this pawn to victory. This is where the 1 second increment would have come in. Yeah, that's where the 1 second increment would have come in. It would have been nice to have that, so I could have survived a little bit. But oh well. All right, let's take a quick look at the game. Alrighty, so let's go back to the beginning. Let me just make one comment about the end game here. Right here. So as soon as I moved here, guaranteed game over. My opponent just has to push for a victory. So now that my king is behind the pawn, this guy, notice he will always be ahead of the king for the queening square. The king can't get there, and so the king is always just trying to approach. But even if this rook weren't here, even if this rook were not in the game, once my king goes behind the group of pawns, then the front pawn, the lead pawn, can walk away to victory. So keep that in mind for your games, guys, all right? So this started off as a e4, e5 Italian game. Again, this is why I say in the Italian game, when you see the Italian game, which is bishop to c4, when that happens, you just mirror it with your bishop. It's the safest move, the best chance you have to not let any shenanigans. Otherwise, if you were to develop with your knight first, notice it cuts off this square, and immediately this knight can jump in. Now you move the bishop out of the way, but it's too late. Your opponent can pick up a free pawn, force you to move the king, and then once the bishop retreats, they're a free pawn and eliminating black's chances for castling right away. 2 huge victories for white. So that's why when we say this, when you see the Italian game, you just mirror it with your bishop. Okay, good. Then my opponent went for this structure, which I'm not 100% certain what that was for. Oh, right. Of course I know what this is. This is going into the Gioco piano. So you've got, so you push the c3 pawn, preparing for d4. Now, sometimes you can pause on d3, which really gets the juices flowing. But this is the Gioco piano. This is called the classical variation, apparently, but it's the Gioco piano. Yes, this is the Gioco piano. You can push d3 in order to prepare for d4. I mean c3 and then d4. You can do that. It's a very slow game. Or you can just start with c3 and then get either d3 or d4 in. My opponent went c3, which apparently is the classical variation. I thought this was called the Gioco pianissimo. Oh, yeah. So, okay. I'm wrong. Who knew? I'm always wrong, so it's fine. So the Gioco pianissimo is when you push here, and then white develops castling, and then, let's say, castling, and then you push here, c3, preparing now d4. So it's a slow roll kind of a game. Gioco piano standing for, translates into the quiet game. Gioco pianissimo is even quieter. It's a very slow game. But we're going to back all up, look at the game as it stands. So c3 is the traditional Italian game, or classical Italian game, just developing. And yeah, so like I said, sometimes the bishop does come back. Does come back in order to defend along this diagonal. I didn't want to push this pawn because I felt like it encouraged this. And I guess that gives black an advantage, a slight advantage. I just don't... I'm not certain. Oh, that was not a good move order. So in this case, don't capture. All right. Yeah, I don't know this line, and I really don't. I didn't want to make that trade. I was not ready to give up a rook for the 2 pieces, plus mess up my kingside structure. But that's how it goes, you know. So I pushed d6. Not my favorite move. You heard me humming and hawing about it in the game, and I can see now that I probably should have just brought my bishop back. If I'm going to push d6, probably just bring the bishop back. And I know you're thinking, if the bishop's going to come back to e2 or e7 anyway, why not just park it there to begin with? Well, because if you park it there to begin with, maybe they don't bring the knight around. Maybe they don't, bring the knight to g5. And if they don't bring the knight to g5, then what's your bishop doing there? So, action and reaction. Let's get rid of this opening explorer. All right, so let's take a look at the rest of this game. Yeah, trapping my bishop was duh. Notice my bishop's already trapped. My opponent just has to push here. It's surprising how much advantage this says that black has with this. What a swing. Right. Black is free to capture because the pawn is pinned. You can't capture back because then you lose a rook. I think I even said that in game at the time that pawn was pinned, but there's no way I'm going to see that many moves ahead. Because I said I don't want to I could capture here, but my opponent could always capture back this way. But then I can capture with the bishop because they don't have capturing back because the oof. That's good. That's clever. So I gave up that opportunity. My opponent gave it back by letting me squeeze out. Huh. Really wanted me to make this trade. That's surprising. So we move back to even in evaluation. We both had about a +2 at some point in time, respectively. Yeah, it says trading is okay here. Wow, what a swing here. Wow, that's interesting. Yeah, that's right. That's right. I remember now because I was thinking, in my brain, I was thinking, yeah, I just capture in, and then I can swing my knight up and over. I keep looking at what White's move order or what White's suggested moves are, or my opponents, regardless of what color they are, because if the engine spots a move that I didn't, I want to know what the danger is. What did I miss? Like, where did my mindset miss it? So I'm not really looking at the engine's moves for me so much. I mean, yes, I am, just to try to verify whether I was thinking correctly or if I made a mistake. But also I want to look at what the dangers that I missed, because that's what's going to make me a better player, is spotting those dangers. My opponent had a significant advantage. Just couldn't turn it right away. Why is that? Because again, it defends and it attacks. Okay. Wheeling the knights around, man. Wow, the engine hates that move. Wow, that was a dumb move. Yep. Like, what did I say? I said once the rook comes to here, then the knight's kind of trapped. The knight would have to come this way, but then I give up this pawn. No, I don't give up the pawn. Now I give up the pawn. Now the knight has to move a second time, and the pawn isn't defended. Okay, that would suck. Luckily, my opponent didn't catch it right away. Gave me a chance to fix it, but I didn't. Yeah, that felt good. That was a good move I felt on my part. Yep, both these felt real good. And then my opponent drops a piece here, so I'm gonna win this game. I'm gonna go back in my own time and look at this end game and figure out where I royally screwed up, because man, I royally screwed up. Here's one place I royally screwed up. Take with the rook and defend the pawn. Don't take with the knight. And now look at this. Now I'm throwing, that's blah, 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 blah. Let your pieces work together. My rook going here, not only does it defend here, but it's defended by the knight. So if I forgot to move it, let's say I pushed a pawn or something and I forgot to move it, it's okay because it's defended and it could have been a trade. So mad at myself sometimes. So mad, so mad. That was dumb. So there's where I threw the game right there. Drop the piece. And now my scattered pawns versus my opponent's tight knit pawns. Push up. Why push up? Because I can get here, and then, yes. Okay. Yep. So I'm going to give up this pawn, but my opponent's now in a little bit of a danger. Because let's say he takes here. I can take here. He is forced to run away. And now I can start pushing my pawn. You'd have to get underneath it. Still defended my pawn, and then I just put my rook here. Then he takes, I take back, and now it's a rook versus a king with 2 pawns. This is a draw. I know, it looks like it should be a win because I've got a big old fat rook. But my opponent has 2 pawns that he can continually hide behind. And no matter how good of a player I am, I'm not good enough to make this work. I would try my darndest, but... And see, and then for forevermore, my opponent just hides behind, and let's say I come down here or something. So that's just one line, but a rook versus king endgame is tricky. And if they have pawns, then they've got shields that they can hide behind and hide behind your checks. So yeah, that's what I should have done, and I get up here. Instead, I went backwards and allowed my opponent to pick up my pawn, and then this push. Oof. Look at that. That's where the game gets thrown. For some reason, I was thinking I had time, but yes, the king is behind my pawn, like we talked about earlier. My king is the king is behind, but he has first move, so the move order is backwards. So he captures, then I push, then he can capture back. It should have gone push, then captures, then I can walk away, but that's not. Yeah, as soon as I mad at myself here. Can't even do that. Yeah, I'm gonna have to study endgames, guys. It's coming to the point now where I have to study endgames. I cannot keep losing these games. We've done study on openings, on multiple different openings. We've also done just generic opening theory, so we know how to handle the unknown. We're practicing our tactics for the mid game, right? Our puzzles that we're doing. We're getting better at those. Whatever. We win some, we lose some, but most of my losing them comes because I'm sitting on my couch and I'm not really paying attention, or I'm sitting in a meeting at work and I'm just kind of clicking through the puzzles, not really paying attention. So I'm gonna get better at puzzles because as long as I slow down and think about them. So if I've got beginning game and I've got mid game training that I'm doing, it's time for me to start looking at end game training. I really need to start looking at end game training. So I think that I'm not going to go look for more openings. I've got a whole list of openings that look cool that I'd like to learn, but I'm not going to study any more openings until I study endgames. Just some basic study of endgames, right? Just some basic theory of endgames, get some ideas, find ways that I can practice my endgames. Who knows? I might be calling you guys, setting up some board positions, and you guys like set up an endgame that I have to then solve. Maybe that's what it boils down to, is I've just got to start practicing in that way. So, all right, guys, I'm going to catch you guys later. This was a fun game. Really enjoyed it. Really, really fun setup. The Italian game, I'm glad I've learned the Italian game. It leads to some fun games. They can be some slow, grindy games, or they can explode where all of a sudden these positional games, one set of exchanges leads to another set, leads to another set, leads to another set, and all of a sudden you go from a full board to an empty board really quick. And those positional advantages hopefully they've set you up for that end game. So that's the Italian game. I really like it. I hope you guys do too. And go out, play some games. Enjoy your chess. Later, guys. Bye.